I said in my last video that I was going to discuss the Elush kinship system. Well, that's not entirely true, because there isn't only one Elush kinship system. So one of the most influential elements of Elush culture is that people should never enter houses they weren't born in. Also, there's no concept of marriage, monogamy, or even romance. So new language isn't regularly incorporated into families, the way it is when couples live together and children are learning a mixture of their parents' language patterns. This means Elush houses have very distinct and stable familects, dialects exclusive to a family. That's especially relevant to kinship systems because people learn them very early in life, so it's difficult for kinship terms to change within a house. But once they have changed, they can be passed down for generations. People do discuss their families with friends, so there is some spread of terms, but usually that just creates a regional standard mixture of different familects, with each house still privately using their own. But the thing that's always important in Elush kinship, no matter the familect, is that maternal relations are far more relevant than paternal relations. So I'm going to make their kinship system pretty asymmetric. Fathers don't really matter, except to the person whose father it is. So the father gets a descriptive term, na uwa lun, literally the man to do with still water, because conception is conceptualized as adding water to clay. And when making pottery, the clay determines much more about the final form than the added water does. So that's why it doesn't really matter whose water it is. Eventually, this association between children and pottery will develop into the nansiok, the jar that holds an unborn child's life. Other members of his house are all na owa kayak, a house to do with still water. On the maternal side, it's a bit more complex. Let's start with the simplest system used. On the maternal side, people are linguistically distinguished only by gender and generation. The women in a speaker's mother's generation are all ama, or more formally amawa. M's are often the first sounds that babies are able to pronounce, so cross-linguistically, a lot of people decide that M sounds mean mother. A child's maternal uncles are the most important male figures in raising them, so they get the next easiest term to pronounce, tati. A daughter is ayan, basically meaning the girl who comes after, or more affectionately, ayanat or nanat, cutesy ways to say girl. Ayan tends to be used more often by the female members of the house, but nanat is used by both ama and tati. A son is nuni, a diminutive form of boy. A brother is senni, and a sister is sewa. A mother's sister's children are also siblings, so they're called senni and sewa too. But a mother's brother's children don't get a term, because they're not considered related, and you probably wouldn't even be aware of their existence. All women of the generation above are grandmothers, dal amawa, often shortened to dalawa, and all men are granduncles, dal tati, often shortened to tauta. They generally call their grandchildren ateyanat and atuni. Over time though, a new pattern emerges. Population density is starting to increase in some areas, as agriculture intensifies. Families in these densely populated areas start to sometimes distinguish linear and collateral relatives. The Elush conceptualize the family as a house, and as such it has rooms, each of these rooms consisting of a woman and her children. They call the room ayahat. This isn't usually very relevant to people's lives, except when houses split. A split usually consists of one room leaving, along with one or two brothers who are kind of considered to belong to the rooms of all of their sisters at once. And as population density increases, houses split more often, because the land is getting crowded near them, or because the family is getting really big, or because they want to spread out to different regions, since split houses tend to remain friendly to each other. Occasionally a room will split off from a more rural area and set up a house in the towns, and vice versa. There's also a bit more focus on reproduction as an individual rather than as a house. Plus, high population density means a bit more interaction with others, and more exposure to new terms, even if it takes a lot of exposure for these terms to actually reach a familect. So in these places, the rooms are a bit more relevant, either because your own family might split, or because everyone else around you thinks rooms are relevant. And so, in some houses, kinship starts to distinguish by generation, gender, and, through the rooms, collateral and lineal relations. Inside the room, the old terms remain. Seya gal, or shared clay, springs up as a term for the bond between people of the same room. The real change happens with maternal aunts and their children, because they're now seen as more distant. A maternal aunt often becomes amayel, mother-ish, but houses vary a lot on this. They might also be nansewa, woman's sister, or sasi, by analogy with tati, and cousins through the maternal aunt get new names too. The most common of these names is lun ayagal, literally a man who shares the house, or an ayagal, a woman who shares the house. But there are tons of variations, like sayel and seniyel, sister-ish and brother-ish, or sewa ayagal and seni ayagal, or namayel an and namayel lun, with mayel swapped out if they use a different term for aunt. Aunts often call their nieces and nephews sewuni and sewanat, sisters' children. But maternal uncles keep calling them nanat and nuni, because their relationship to them hasn't changed. Sometimes families develop completely unique terms, often through baby talk versions of typical kinship terms, or through nicknames. Let's say the youngest boy in a generation gets the nickname Little Frog because he's really energetic, and in the next generation another child gets that nickname in reference to the first. And eventually nobody in that house knows why they call the youngest boy Little Frog, just that it's what their house does. You could probably trace back a genealogy of split houses by looking at the terms they use for their families.